I'm Sabrina, 19, and I need to get something off my chest because it still pisses me off every time I think about it. I need someone to tell me I'm not crazy here because everyone else just doesn't get it. I was trying to be honest about what I wanted instead of lying like so many other girls do, but apparently guys don't actually want honesty, no matter how much they say they do. I'm so sick of people acting like I'm the bad guy for being real about my feelings. I'd been with Mikey for 8 months, okay? And don't get me wrong, he was sweet, like textbook good boyfriend. He'd text me good morning every day, bring me those fancy iced coffees I love between my college classes, always doing that thoughtful stuff everyone says you're supposed to want. He works in some computer thing. I don't know. It's so technical. My brain just shuts off when he talks about it. I work part time in retail, which isn't glamorous or anything, but whatever. It's a job. The point is, we had this nice little routine going. He'd pick me up after work. We'd grab dinner somewhere, watch Netflix, do that whole domestic couple thing that everyone says is so perfect when you're in love. But here's the thing nobody wants to admit. Sometimes nice gets boring as hell. Mikey was so freaking predictable. Every Friday, he'd suggest the same 3 restaurants like clockwork. Every weekend, he wanted to stay in, organize something random like his desk, or talk about our future together. And I'm like, I'm 19. I should be out having fun, living my life, not settling into some old married couple routine already. But I didn't want to hurt his feelings because honestly, he was trying so hard to be a good boyfriend. I could tell he really cared about me, and I didn't want to be that girl who just complains about everything. Then Chris, my ex, started texting me again, completely out of nowhere. And before anyone starts judging, I didn't reach out first. He just sent this random message asking how I was doing, probably because he saw something on my social media that reminded him of when we dated. Chris and I had this intense thing for almost 2 years before it got complicated and we broke up. He was my first everything, if you catch my drift. First love, first heartbreak, all of it. Being with him felt like actually living, like every moment was electric instead of just existing day to day. At first, I thought about not responding because I'm with Mikey now and I didn't want any drama, but it was just a friendly text, right? Nothing wrong with being polite to an ex, especially one I actually cared about. So I texted back, just casual stuff about school and work. But then he started bringing up all these inside jokes we used to have, sending me pictures of places we went together with little comments like, remember this, with heart emojis and stuff. I'm not gonna lie, it felt good, really good. Like with Mikey, everything was so serious and planned out all the time. He'd literally ask permission before kissing me sometimes, which I guess is respectful, but it kind of kills the moment? Chris was never like that. He was spontaneous, passionate, always kept me guessing. When we were together, I felt like the most interesting person in the world, not just some girlfriend he was checking boxes with. I started looking forward to Chris's texts way more than Mikey's good morning messages. And I know how that sounds, but it's not like I was doing anything wrong. We were just talking, catching up, being friendly. I wasn't cheating or anything. I was just enjoying having someone to talk to who actually got my sense of humor and didn't want to discuss our 5-year plan every other conversation. Maybe I got a little distant with Mikey during this time, but he was being kind of clingy anyway. He was always asking what I was thinking about, if everything was okay, like I had to report my every mood to him. If I took more than 10 minutes to text back, he'd get all paranoid asking if something was wrong. I'd tell him nothing was wrong because honestly, nothing was wrong. I was just talking to an old friend. The thing is, I started remembering why I fell for Chris in the first place, how exciting everything felt with him, how alive I felt around him. With Mikey, I felt safe and comfortable, sure, but comfortable isn't the same as happy, is it? I'm too young to settle for just comfortable. I should be experiencing things, exploring who I am, not playing house with the first nice guy who came along. But I also didn't want to just throw away what I had with Mikey. He really was good to me, and breaking up would be this whole dramatic thing I wasn't ready to deal with. Plus, what if things with Chris didn't work out? Then I'd have given up something real for something that might not even happen. That seemed stupid. That's when I started thinking there might be another way, a better way. I'd heard about open relationships before, seen articles online about how they can make couples stronger because there's more honesty and communication, like people who are secure enough to handle that level of trust and openness. Maybe that was the solution. Instead of choosing between Mikey's stability and Chris's excitement, maybe I could have both. I know what you're thinking, but hear me out. Wouldn't it be better to be honest about having feelings for someone else instead of sneaking around like most people do? Isn't that more mature than just cheating behind someone's back? I was trying to do the right thing here to handle this like an adult instead of some teenager who can't control her impulses. I started researching open relationships, reading about couples who made it work, learning the right terminology so I could present this properly. This wasn't some crazy idea I came up with to justify cheating. This was a legitimate relationship structure that lots of evolved people use. I found articles about ethical non monogamy, how it can strengthen trust when done right. I was nervous about bringing it up with Mikey, but I figured if he really loved me and trusted me, he'd at least be willing to talk about it. I wasn't asking him to say yes to everything right away, just to have an open conversation about what we both wanted and needed. That's what healthy couples do, right? They talk about tough stuff instead of pretending everything's perfect. The perfect opportunity came when we were watching some movie with a cheating subplot. I paused it and said how ridiculous it was that people sneak around instead of just being honest about wanting to explore other connections. Mikey looked confused, so I started explaining how there are other ways to handle attraction besides ignoring it or cheating. I told him we're both young, maybe we shouldn't limit ourselves to just one person at 19 and 20. We could set boundaries, be completely honest, and explore things while still keeping our connection. I used all the right terms: ethical non monogamy, evolved relationship structures, mature communication. I explained how this could bring us closer because we'd be sharing everything instead of hiding things. The whole time I was talking, I was thinking about how amazing this could be. I could act on all this tension with Chris without the guilt while still keeping the security and sweetness I had with Mikey. It seemed like the perfect solution to a complicated situation. But Mikey's face went through like 10 different expressions: confusion, hurt, suspicion. When I finished my whole speech, he was quiet for way too long. Then he asked the question I was dreading. Did I have someone specific in mind? I tried to play it off like it was just theoretical, just something I'd been thinking about in general. But he kept pushing, asking more direct questions, and I could see he already knew the answer. When he straight up asked about Chris, my heart started pounding. I admitted we'd been talking, but I swore it was completely innocent, just old friends catching up, nothing inappropriate. But Mikey wasn't buying it. He wanted to know why I hadn't mentioned we were talking, and I got defensive. I told him I don't have to report every conversation I have, that he was being possessive and insecure. But really, I was just mad he was making this into a big dramatic thing instead of seeing the logic of what I was suggesting. I was being honest, not cheating like other girlfriends would do. We ended up having this huge fight where he kept asking questions I didn't want to answer, and I kept turning it around, accusing him of not trusting me enough for a mature relationship. We went to bed that night with all this tension between us, and I lay awake thinking about how to make him understand this could work if he'd just be open minded. The next morning, Mikey brought it up again, and I could tell he'd spent the whole night stewing. He wanted specifics. When Chris started texting what we talked about, whether I'd made plans to see him, I tried to keep my answers vague because it was none of his business, but he wasn't letting it go. Finally, I admitted Chris and I had met for coffee a few weeks ago, just as friends. Nothing happened. But Mikey's whole expression changed when I said it. He asked why I'd told him I was working late that night instead of saying I was getting coffee with a friend. Tried to explain it wasn't a big deal, that I didn't want him to get the wrong idea about something innocent, but he wasn't buying that either. He pointed out I'd been distant lately, lying about small things, and that I clearly wanted an open relationship because of Chris specifically. I got so frustrated because he was making me sound calculating and dishonest when I was just trying to figure out my feelings while being considerate of his. I told him his reaction was exactly why I hadn't mentioned the coffee. He was being jealous and possessive instead of trusting me. But Mikey wasn't backing down. He said if I wanted to explore things with other people, especially Chris, I should just break up with him and do it. He didn't want to be someone's backup plan while they figured out what they really wanted. I tried explaining that it wasn't like that open relationships could help us both grow, that lots of couples make it work and are happier for it. I said he was being closed minded and traditional, letting insecurity ruin something that could be good for us. The more I talked, the more frustrated I got because he was missing the point. I wasn't trying to replace him or make him a backup. I was trying to be honest instead of suppressing my feelings or cheating. Finally, he asked point blank if I wanted to sleep with Chris, and I froze. This was the moment where I could lie or be completely honest and hope he'd appreciate my maturity. I chose honesty. I told him, yes, I had feelings for Chris, and yes, I'd been thinking about him. But that's why an open relationship made sense. Instead of sneaking around or breaking up, we could handle this like adults. I said it didn't mean I loved him any less, just that I wasn't ready to close off other possibilities at 19. I thought he'd appreciate my honesty, but his whole demeanor changed. He got this cold, distant look and said I was asking for permission to cheat with my ex while keeping him as a safety net. I tried arguing it's not cheating if we both agree to it, that open relationships are built on trust and communication, but I could see I was losing him. He asked why I didn't just break up with him if I wanted Chris, and I struggled to explain without sounding selfish. The truth was, I wanted both. Mikey's stability and sweetness, Chris's excitement and passion. I didn't see why I had to choose when there was a perfectly reasonable alternative. But Mikey didn't see it as reasonable. He said I was trying to have my cake and eat it too, using fancy terminology to justify wanting to cheat. He said if I was already emotionally invested in someone else, our relationship was already over, whether I admitted it or not. The conversation spiraled from there, both of us saying things we probably shouldn't have. I called him immature and insecure, not evolved enough for a progressive relationship. He called me selfish and manipulative, trying to rewrite the rules after already breaking them. By the end, we weren't even talking about open relationships anymore, just trust, honesty, and what we wanted. I started thinking maybe we weren't as compatible as I thought if he couldn't even consider what I was suggesting. Mikey didn't break up with me right away, which gave me hope I could fix this. For a few days, we barely talked, both processing what happened. I convinced myself he just needed time to think logically, that he'd see my suggestion showed how much I valued our relationship. I spent hours researching successful open relationships, finding testimonials and articles to prove this wasn't a crazy idea. I saved links, screenshotted quotes, built a whole case to show him. Meanwhile, I was texting Chris more, venting about how unreasonable Mikey was being, how he was making this about trust when it was about personal growth and honesty. Chris was so understanding, saying some people just aren't mature enough for open relationships, that it takes emotional intelligence to handle that level of honesty. His validation felt amazing after Mikey's cold shoulder and disappointed looks. I started spending more time texting Chris and less trying to fix things with Mikey. I justified it by telling myself, Mikey didn't want to talk anyway, so why should I keep trying? If he wanted to be stubborn and traditional instead of working with me, that was his choice. When Mikey finally brought it up again, it wasn't to discuss boundaries or logistics like I'd hoped. He sat me down and said he'd realized I was asking for permission to pursue Chris while keeping him as a safety net. He said he couldn't be with someone who was actively chasing their ex, no matter what label I put on it. I tried arguing he was being dramatic, that lots of couples have successful open relationships, that he was letting jealousy cloud his judgment, but he cut me off and said something that stuck with me. If I wanted Chris, I should just be with Chris, but I couldn't have both. He said he deserved someone who actually wanted to be monogamous with him, not someone constantly looking elsewhere. The fact that I suggested this told him where my head was at. I tried to backtrack, saying Chris wasn't that important, that we could forget the whole idea, but it was too late. Mikey said he couldn't trust I wouldn't bring this up again when I got bored or when Chris came around. He said he'd rather end things now while he still had some self-respect than wait for me to decide if he was good enough. The conversation ended with him saying he needed space, and I was left wondering how my brilliant plan had gone so wrong. A week later, Mikey broke up with me over text. Not even a phone call after 8 months together, just a straightforward message saying he was done and wished me well. I was furious he didn't have the decency to do it in person, but also relieved because now I could pursue Chris without guilt or complications. I texted Chris immediately, expecting him to be excited, ready to pick up where we left off. His response was lukewarm at best. He said he was sorry things didn't work out with my boyfriend, but over the next few days, his texts got less frequent, more distant. When I suggested meeting up, he kept making excuses about work or friends. I started getting this sinking feeling he wasn't as interested as I thought. After a week of increasingly desperate texts trying to be funnier, asking about his day, I confronted him. I asked if he was having second thoughts about us reconnecting, if he was intimidated by me being newly single. That's when he dropped the bomb. He'd been seeing someone new, a girl from work, and things were getting serious. He said he enjoyed catching up with me, but wasn't looking for anything complicated. He even suggested we stop texting so he wouldn't give his new girlfriend the wrong idea, like I was some threat to be managed instead of someone he'd been flirting with for weeks. I was completely devastated and furious. While I was trying to engineer this perfect situation where I could have everything, Chris was just enjoying the ego boost of his ex chasing him. He was never actually available or interested in anything serious. I destroyed a perfectly good relationship with someone who genuinely cared about me for someone who was just bored. I tried reaching out to Mikey, texting apologies, saying I was confused and made a mistake, but he never responded. When I saw him on campus, he was polite but distant, treating me like an acquaintance, not someone he'd loved for 8 months. Through mutual friends, I heard he was dating someone new pretty quickly, some girl from his program who apparently found his computer talk fascinating instead of boring. They seemed happy on social media, posting pictures of coffee dates and study sessions, doing all the things we used to do, but looking more genuine about it. 3 months after everything fell apart, I ran into them at a restaurant downtown. I was there with friends trying to move on when I saw them at a corner table. Mikey looked relaxed and happy, laughing at something she said, holding her hand. She was everything I wasn't. Completely focused on him, asking about his work like she cared, looking at him like he was the most interesting person in the world. Watching them, I felt this stab of jealousy and regret I tried to push down. But I also felt angry. Why couldn't he have been that relaxed and happy with me? Why did I have to be the bad guy for wanting something more exciting than his boring routine? Maybe if he'd been more spontaneous, more passionate, more like Chris, I wouldn't have looked elsewhere. I never admitted out loud that I made a mistake because I'm not sure I did. I was just trying to be honest about what I wanted instead of settling for something that wasn't making me completely happy. Maybe Mikey and I just weren't compatible if he couldn't handle that level of honesty and openness. I told friends the breakup was mutual, that we wanted different things and weren't right for each other long term. I painted myself as the mature one who was honest about having feelings for someone else instead of cheating like most people would. But late at night, scrolling through social media, seeing all the couple photos and relationship milestones I'm missing out on, I can't help but feel like maybe I was too hasty. Not about wanting more. I still think I deserve to explore my options at 19, but about how I handled everything.